cervical cancer. Meaghan, come on in.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I would never expect to be here. I didn't think that I would survive my battle with cancer, never mind being able to speak in front of so many people about my battle. We talked a lot about statistics and what cervical cancer is, what HPV is, and I wanted to give people a glimpse into the life of what it's like to actually be someone battling cervical cancer. And I know there are other people in this room who have gone through a similar battle of mine. In 2001, I was United States Congressional Aide for the 1st Congressional District in Massachusetts, so I had a similar job as some people in this room. I then went on to law school in Florida. And in 2007, in my 2nd semester of law school, I was diagnosed with stage 3B cervical cancer, which, like Tamika, is advanced cervical cancer. I had insurance at the time, and I went through a long period of misdiagnosis because I was too young and I didn't fit the criteria. I never smoked a cigarette. I didn't have any abnormal pap smears. I didn't have a history of any STDs. I didn't fit into that box of someone they expect to have cervical cancer. And to be honest with you, I never thought about cervical cancer before. It never even really crossed my mind. I ended up getting 2 blood transfusions and then was flown up to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, Massachusetts. That's when I started to learn what it was like to have cervical cancer and how difficult the treatments were, and I was shocked. Chemotherapy to me was a breeze compared to everything else. I had cisplatin, as I know many women in this room did. It's a very difficult chemotherapy. I had ringing in my ears, which I still do, have a hard time hearing from that. I also had external radiation, which was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And to top that off, I had internal radiation, which is really fun. So if the radiation on the outside doesn't affect you, the radiation on the inside certainly will. I also had my kidney ruptured because my tumor got so large, and I had nephrostomy tubes put in my back, which I carried my own urine around with me. If that wasn't enough with the chemo, the internal, the external radiation, and the nephrostomy tubes, I also had stents placed in my ureters, which felt lovely because I had burnt organs. So I had these stents rubbing up against my bladder, so every time I went to the bathroom, I screamed in excruciating pain, sometimes having to pull my hair to endure the pain. And they also left a catheter in me as well, so it was a really good time there. I remember I spent most of my time in the hospital with Dilaudid IV drips and whatnot. Sometimes they would let me out because you can't be in the hospital too long. I did get MRSA from being in the hospital for so long. And when I would go into the little waiting room for radiation, I would often see other people chatting, knitting, reading magazines, and I wasn't doing any of those things. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with me besides the cancer? I must not have the will. I must not be strong. And eventually, I had no one to talk to about cervical cancer. You know, at Dana-Farber, they had those, you know, you can have another person who has had cancer like you groups. Oh, but we don't have anyone for you. So I was very alone, and I asked the doctor, I said, why? What's wrong with me? Do I not have the will to live? And that's when she told me, Meaghan, cervical cancer is one of the worst treatment that you can get. So for people who think, one, I'm not going to get cervical cancer because I am just not that person. I don't fit into that criteria. Think again. It can happen to you. And then if you think, oh, well, it's no big deal, because I have had people say that to me. Oh, that's one of the easier cancers. You can just get that freezed off, right? Think again. If you're diagnosed with cervical cancer, it is the strongest chemotherapy. It's any type of radiation. That radiation on your stomach, let's talk about secondary effects for a second. So that, after all that horrible experience was over, I had to have surgery after I was done with chemo and radiation. I had surgery every 3 months to replace those stents. And in the meantime, I would collect kidney stones. And usually I would have about 20 to 25 kidney stones by the time they would change the stents. I had to be flown. I went back to Florida because I was going to get my life back. I went back to Florida, I went back to law school, and I flew up every 3 months, went under general anesthesia, had them pull out my stents, put new stents in, get on the plane, fly back down, go to school. Sometimes I wore diapers. This went on for a while, and I felt like, going under general anesthesia every 3 months. I was miserable. I was studying for the bar. I couldn't think. I had chemo fog. I had also PTSD, and eventually I fired one of my doctors. By the way, you can do that. I fired one of my doctors, and I said, I can't live. This is how you're going to live your life for the rest of your life. Surgery every 3 months. Nope. In 2009, I had my left kidney removed. Because of all the radiation, I could not have it laparoscopically removed. Of course not. That would be too easy. I had a rib removed, and they cut me from my left all the way across my stomach so that they could just pull out my kidney without worrying about ripping any of my organs. Because I would like to keep my bladder. I'm glad the tubes are gone and the bags are gone, and I did make it through. Without, having bags, and some women don't. But like Tamika, I can never have children. I'll never know what that feels like. I can live with that, but it's not fair. And it was preventable, and I didn't even know what this disease was that just destroyed my life. I'm in menopause. I'll be in a room and I'll be like, I'm having a hot flash, and people will say, well, at least, no, you're not. You don't know anything about menopause. Yes, I do. I do. I'm going to be 32 in March, and I had a huge chunk of my life stolen, but I am alive, and Dawn is here today, who I love, representing her sister, who was 28 years old, the same age as I when she was diagnosed, and she passed away 7 months after her diagnosis. This happens to young people. It can happen to you, and that's just my message to everyone that's in this room, that you can listen to the numbers, you can look at the statistics, you can take it home with you. But what I want you to take home with you is that this is something that can affect you. You're not immune from it. You need to be concerned. You need to be fighting for this, because it can happen to you. It can happen to your friend. It can happen to your child. And if they're, for the men in this room, it can happen to your daughter, your wife. This is really important. It's not just a small little cancer that doesn't happen, or when it does happen, it's easy to take care of. So I guess that's all. That's my message. If anyone has any questions for me afterwards, I'll be around, and I'm always very happy. No question is, you can ask me personal questions. That's totally fine. So, but thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone, for caring about this, and I finally feel like I'm not alone in my cervical cancer battle, so I appreciate it.